This is Solstice Shorts book 4, but event 5, Noon. It was a Friday that year, 2018, and we kind of done the evening to death by then. So we thought, how can we manage this? So we thought, we'll do 45 minutes at noon on the dot in as many places as we can find that are prepared to play. A bit like with Dusk, but all at the same time as opposed to overlapping. We had events in Aberdeen, Edinburgh, Carlisle, Holyhead and London. So 2 in Scotland, 2 in England and 1 in Wales. There was going to be 1 in Cork, but everybody went down with norovirus. So that didn't happen. It's rather unfortunate. It was a flash of inspiration in the winter darkness. Nice cover, eh? I made that. Revisiting the original Frozen Sun design for Solstice Shorts number 1 and made hot and sultry, rather like today. The idea was short. So we have flash fiction and poems, and we had a very, very stiff limit on them. And also music. We have music about noon in 1 or 2 places, which was rather lovely. Because of this sort of transitory flash in the pan sort of feel that we have stories of momentary mistakes and cataclysmic change, being on time, celebration, chance meetings, serendipity and rituals. Mad dogs and Englishmen get their say, but not as you might expect, as do scientists and dreamers. High noon is enacted on the streets of a Scottish town. Language is explored in Senegal.
Arthur Streeton was an Australian artist, and during World War I he was a war artist in France, which may help understand this poem a little bit. So Arthur Streeton advises his students by Mandy MacDonald. No, none of that flat, transparent light. Your light needs to slant, scatter, explode in loose, fierce brushstrokes, white-hot blades fallen off the sun to crash land among your gum trees, smash the vertical design. Think of those skeleton trunks as maenads. You know the myth, don't you? Bacchus and his dancers, sinewy, silvery, and improbably upright. The maddening Thyrsus wand, a shaken gesture of leaves high up, thick flicks of grey-white paint, edged with sun, praising the light, its cruelty. Whatever pigments you use, think of everything as white. If there is water in these pictures, put no blue in it. Make it a quicksilver snake. The grass between trees, a sheet of pale, beaten gold. Out here, it is everlasting, violent noon.
And vampires strut the streets of Mallorca. And everywhere the sun sticks in an oar and clocks strike. Of course, it was the second time that we did live uploads, so we actually had live video beaming out into the universe from all of the different sites as it was happening.
Under the L by Liam Hogan. 12 o'clock, Emma asked. Noon, lass, tomorrow, when the sun is at its highest. That's when you'll meet the love of your life. Outside Primark? Third window from the left. Emma stared at the matchmaker's table. It was strewn with almanacs and tarot cards and star charts. A crystal ball covered in a gauzy scarf hadn't, thankfully, been brought into play, but everything else had, from a lengthy perusal of her sweaty palm to waving crystals around on pieces of cotton thread. Are you sure about this? Quite, the matchmaker / fortune teller replied. That'll be 50 quid. Emma had tried the dating apps. Of course she had, from Tinder to Bumble, but she had quickly become discouraged. All the men seemed to be lying about something, whether it was their careers, their intentions, or more ridiculously, their height. What? They didn't expect her to notice when they rocked up shorter than Emma's 5'9". The advert in the newsagent's window had led with guaranteed success. She'd half expected a lengthy questionnaire, a techie crunching the numbers before a computer spat out a name, an offline dating agency. Instead, a woman whose nose and ears betrayed her advanced age stooped on the basement doorstep at the address listed, peering owlishly through bottle-thick lenses. You're here for a matching? Emma flustered. Yes, the ad in Smithy's, it said, I've more than one iron in the fire, girl. Come in. You're letting all the heat out. Can you at least describe my match to me? Emma asked, fumbling for her purse. Somehow she knew the matchmaker wouldn't take credit cards. Doesn't work that way. The crone softened. Just be there. It'll all come good. Promise. Or your money back. Emma wondered if, should she ever have the courage to ask for a refund, she'd find the woman gone. Or maybe she'd belligerently deny having ever promised anything, or worse, accuse Emma of messing up her one chance of happiness by not following the crone's exact instructions. Noon, indeed. Back home, she tackled her younger by a decade brother for astronomical information. Sammy, she asked, all innocent, when's noon? Sammy looked up from his iPad. Unlike other kids his age, he was probably watching some science lecture or another. Well, he said, thoughtful, it's winter, so you don't have to worry about daylight savings. But high noon varies according to your latitude. It does, Emma interjected, unsure if latitude was the one that went east to west or north to south. Sammy nodded, solemn. Before the railways, towns used to run their own local times. Tell you what, bring up the weather app for this postcode. Okay. See the sunrise and sunset times. Split it down the middle, that should give you solar and meridian noon. Thanks, geek, denied the look. Emma kept checking the time on her iPhone. The real problem wasn't being in the right place at noon. It was being there at all. The one thing she couldn't do, mustn't do, was to be seen lurking outside Primark. Her so-called friends would never let her forget it. window on the left was occupied by a huge red poster. Not yet Christmas, and already the sales had begun. She wavered, stood by the M&S food hall on the other side. She'd done Sammy's trick with the Times, was waiting until the last minute before crossing the road. But what if she got it wrong? Maybe she should have asked her brother to calculate it, but then he'd want to know why, and oh, it didn't bear telling. 50 quid for this! She craned her head to look up at the pale blue sky. The sun was around somewhere, but her side of the street was deep in shadow, and the low angle of the sun cast that shadow all the way to the other Primark side. Reluctantly, she crossed, stood under the L of sale. She kept squinting up at the rooftops of the buildings opposite. She couldn't see the sun, but the dazzle around the chimney pots told her it was up there. And then, like clouds parting, a shaft of sunlight snuck between two of the chimney stacks, falling directly on her like a spotlight in a theatre. You too, said a soft Irish lilt beside her. Her dazzled eyes struggled to make out the speaker. Red hairs, freckles, wearing sunglasses, as if prepared for this moment. Me too what? Had this girl been to the fortune teller as well? Were they both waiting for the same bloody guy, the same perfect match? If so, Emma was going to do more than ask for a refund. She'd tear the old crone apart. It was made worse that her competitor was so undeniably cute. The sun only hitting the spot on one day a year, on the solstice, exactly at noon. That's what, the girl replied, a whimsical smile in the sparkling light. Emma almost nodded her head, as if this was carefully planned. But then she thought about all those untruths on the dating sites. I didn't know, she admitted. I mean, I knew it was noon and the solstice, but not this. I guess I'm here mostly by chance. An arm snaked through hers. Lucky you. I'm Alice. When the fortune teller wandered past on the other side of the road, long after the sun had continued on its way, dipping the sale sign back into shadow, neither girl noticed, too engrossed in conversation. A conversation that would last for a further 2 hours over lunch in a pub Alice knew, tucked away from the Christmas shopping frenzy, and then be picked up the evening after at a wine bar Emma chose. The crone nodded in satisfaction and gave herself 5 stars on Yelp.
And you've been involved in quite a few of the Solstice Shorts. Noon wasn't your first, was it?
Well, that was the first one I offered to help to organise. Yeah. And then there was Dusk the year before, wasn't there? That's right. Yeah.
So that was the first time we published you, was in Dusk.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you were brave and stepped up and said, "Oh, I'd like to be involved in this." Any regrets?
Well, I'd like to have, it was very difficult because obviously there was no budget, and I was trying to find a venue where they could happily host us, but it wouldn't be noisy. There would be no background noise that was big enough to give us a space for nothing. So it was quite difficult, really. So I didn't want to flood the place out, nor did I want nobody to turn up. And as it was, there were just a few friends and 1 or 2 people who just happened to drop by, really. So it would have been nice if there had been more people there. But it was, I think it was nice, you know, what it was a nice event, really. And we all, myself and my friends, you know, did our best really to make it a nice event. But it would have been, I'd have been happier if there'd have been a few more people there really.
Yeah, an actual audience rather than talking to
an actual audience. That's right. Yeah.
But you know, there was an
Yeah.
online audience, and there's been an online audience for it subsequently, so
Yeah.
effort not wasted.
No.
But also, of course, because you were running one of the events, that meant you were helping choose what went in the book.
Yes.
So I mean, it's a while back now, isn't it? It's 2 years.
There were some very good poems, good poems and short stories. Yes, I really enjoyed the process actually. Yeah.
So I probably should explain the process, shouldn't I? So what happens is that we put a call out usually on the 21st of March and with a closing date 21st of June, because solstice, equinox, blah blah, and also it just makes sense really and gives me time to do stuff. And when the event is being held on more than one site, the people who are organising either get involved in the long listing or in the short listing. And if they're long listing, they're not allowed to look at stuff that's potentially going to be read. Oh no, not that is written by people local to them in case that to be friends. So they're not allowed to look at their own work, as it were, or indeed vote on their own poems. Solves that one. And then the long list is given to everybody who's doing the organising, who were not necessarily involved in the long listing, to choose what they are going to read. And sometimes that's professional actors, sometimes it's the poets themselves, sometimes it's whoever we can drag in and say, sit there, read, depending on funding, obviously. And so it's quite rigorous. I mean, for Dusk we had 12 sites, so at least 12 people, and in some places there were 3 or 4 people involved in the organising, so actually 30 people were reading these things and saying yes or no, and anything that got performed ends up in the book. So it's fairly thoroughly tested by them. And so it's an interesting process, and I think it turns out a rather good book personally. But the whole idea of Solstice is that it's live and it's location based, and this of course it's not going to be, because we can't risk organising it like that. It will be online, but I suppose the advantage of that is that we will be able to involve our overseas authors more. And what I'm hoping to do is produce it as a package and be able to say to libraries, bookshops, whoever, anywhere in the world, would you like to put this on your website for
fantastic
whatever time of day we decide to do it, so that it's potentially a 24-hour.
That would be great.
Fun,
that's fantastic. It does.
But who knows.
But I think, that's the reason why I got involved with Arachne Press, really, was your concept of Solstice. It was a Solstice Shorts really that really pulled me in, and it was so inspirational really. And I just thought, I'm going to go in for this thing. I don't know whether they'll like my poem, but I'm just going to do it, because I think that the whole sort of solstice event, that whole concept of the time of year, and that very ancient feeling, that is there in all of us if we listen to it,
It's what you're supposed to do at Solstice. You tell stories.
Exactly.
Sit around a roaring fire. And
that's right, So I just sort of imagined this scene, laid out in the middle of contemporary Edinburgh, and it was lovely that it got chosen, and that meant a lot to me really. So I think your whole concept of Solstice Shorts is fantastic, and I know it's not going to be the same this year, but it's something I'm sure that hopefully next year things will be better, and the online events that that I've participated in have been really good, actually. They've been really quite. It's different, and it's not the same as a live performance, live readings, but they have a life of their own. And I think it's just use the technology we've got for now.
We had a lot of return authors for this one, but also a lot of newbies, particularly for poetry. So that was lovely. Very thin book on account of it being flash fiction. So although there's quite a lot of stories, they're all short, which means that it's a cheaper book than many. It's only $8.99, and if you buy it during August, you can get it for $7.99 because it's £1 off.
I am not beautiful at noon. At noon, you think you have me where you want me. Hold me at bay, high on the tips of my own spears. I hang like a naked light bulb, burning my prisoner's blinded eye, harangue and harry you, hot and angry. Maddened, I make you face the white specks of my ire, or flee into shadows that dwindle to a dot and disappear. I am not beautiful at noon. But when the dark arrows of birds pierce the hedgerows at dusk, along the lanes, and you untie me from the sky, I run down the sloping fields and launch myself out over the plain, beyond the reach of the children and their handfuls of wet grass. Glorious, I slip beneath your horizon.